So earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Trump family got as much as $5 billion in paper wealth. That's how the journal describes it, but I'd love for you to explain what that means. Um, because their crypto, you know, venture basically had the equivalent of an IPO earlier this week and like basically opened up. And the Trump family has a quarter of all World Liberty financial tokens that are in existence. And so they made billions of dollars this week. How did that all happen?
Yeah, so the Trump family launched a project called World Liberty Financial some time ago, and they issue a token, WLFI is the token, that was originally meant to just be it's called a governance token, but essentially it's not worth anything. You just use it to vote on the future of the platform and so on. It was originally very locked down. There was no secondary trading. It was only available to accredited investors or people who are outside of the US, largely because at the time, this was in the previous administration, the SEC was much more active in policing unregistered securities offerings. And so I think they were largely trying to dodge any issue with the SEC, seeing it as a unregistered securities offering, which was how they were viewing a lot of crypto tokens at the time. Um, since then, under Trump, the SEC has dramatically backed off from enforcing cryptocurrency related cases. They've made statements to the effect that most cryptocurrencies are not securities. And so the World Liberty Financial Project has changed the design of the token essentially so that it is now available for secondary resale. And that was essentially what caused the windfall earlier this week was now that that token is resaleable and there is sort of a market price for it because it's being actively traded, the large amount of that token held by the Trump family now has this paper price of, several $billions. And now the Wall Street Journal is careful to describe it as a paper price because the issue with a lot of crypto tokens is that if one holder holds a substantial quantity of those tokens, they can't necessarily cash out at that amount. The token price is largely based on supply and demand. And so if there was this sudden influx of supply with the Trumps, dumping their entire holdings, they would not be able to cash out likely anywhere near that many, 5 billion or 6 billion or whatever the number is going around.
However, it still is a multi-billion-dollar windfall. Just want to emphasize that, even
Right.
though, like as you mentioned, the valuation. It's not going to be reflected if they were to cash out. Like when you talk a little bit about the tokens themselves, like, is there any statutory regulation that prevents some of these like exchanges or currencies from printing more? I know that to do so would like dilute, say, the value of the folks who got in initially. But I could also see circumstances in which that would be beneficial for people and it would just screw over the regular, uh, Reddit investors or day traders of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, the retail.
Retails,
Um,
right, exactly.
Yeah, so it really depends on the project. It's really up to less the exchanges and more World Liberty Financial, the company itself, whether or not they would issue more tokens. They have at various points done so. So there was an early allocation of tokens. The amount sort of changed a little bit throughout that process. There was early, like they had challenges meeting demand or finding demand early on. And so the number really moved around a lot. They've since issued more of those tokens for sale. So I think there is, a substantial possibility that that could happen.
But it's just I remember the arguments about cryptocurrency being that there was a finite amount, or at least maybe that's just particular to Bitcoin. Like what then if if there is the ability for the more coins or whatever to be printed, doesn't that undercut the central argument about cryptocurrency being an alternative to regular currency? Because their critique of that was, oh, you could just print more money.
Yeah, so you're totally right that that is a major selling point for Bitcoin specifically, which does have a hard cap at the amount of Bitcoins that will ever be circulated. That's not so much the case for other cryptocurrencies. So there are major cryptocurrencies like Ethereum or Solana, which do not have that finite cap. Um, and they do have to grapple with that issue that, they could theoretically print, infinite crypto tokens and cause the price to go to zero, essentially. There are different mechanics in which blockchain projects try to get around that. And we've seen the World Liberty Financial Project already experimenting with that throughout or in recent days, where they have begun, it's called burning tokens, where it's essentially destroying tokens that have already been issued to do the reverse, to reduce the supply and hopefully increase the demand. So that's already been happening as the World Liberty team is trying to sort of pump the price of the token, quite frankly.
Right.
And so I think that is, the type of activity we'll be seeing going forward.
Well, it's also, I mean, even if they don't cash out and sell all of their cryptocurrency for hard cash, they use this money or like their holdings here to say get like favorable loans and borrow against it in the way that Elon Musk purchased Twitter or for example. This is how really wealthy people make their
Right.
money, is like they don't even cash out, they just use it as a leverage point.
Yeah, I mean, that is frankly my biggest concern with these types of projects, is that they are not necessarily going to sell all of their assets, but they will borrow against them. That was a major cause of the most recent crypto crash in 2022 or so. Certainly there were other aspects as well, but the amount of leverage in the system was what caused it to crash so dramatically and so quickly, I would say, is that, assets being loaned out, reduced in value, people defaulted on the loans, that caused the assets to be sold at fire sale prices. The price went down, and it's sort of this vicious cycle where that degree of leverage in the system can spiral very, very quickly. And especially in crypto, where there is very dubious pricing, a lot of the due diligence by lenders is extremely shabby. A lot of it is sort of reputation rather than the quality of the assets. I think there is an enormous amount of risk, especially with projects like this, where, the tokens have sort of dubious resale value. It's a lot tied to sort of the Trump reputation.
Right.
And so I think that's going to be the question. I mean, a lot of traditional lenders do not lend against cryptocurrency. And so it's not likely that the Trumps are going to go out and get a bank loan against these assets. But there is this proliferation of lending in the crypto world, which is generally lending against existing assets, such as World Liberty Financial tokens. And I could definitely see them trying to take advantage of that.
How is that possible then? Is this lending kind of infrastructure completely like below the surface? I mean, how can cryptocurrencies, I don't know, operate in this way? I thought we had banking regulations that kind of made it so these banks were the main show in town.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot has changed in the regulatory worlds when it comes to crypto. A lot of these crypto lending projects either moved outside of the United States or shut down. In recent years, the SEC brought cases against crypto lenders. We saw Gemini, Coinbase shut down lending products because of the regulatory problems around these types of offerings. But now they've opened right back up. They've started offering loans to U.S. customers, and the regulation is largely non-existent, especially as there is this ongoing question of who the primary regulator even is. And, the SEC has essentially taken a step back and said, we don't know who it is, but it's not us.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.